Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. Here I am in my hotel room in Medan at the Wisma Sederhana Hotel. I've made this my home for the last couple of months, in fact, and I'm enjoying my morning cup of coffee, and I thought I'd have a little bit of a chat with anyone out there in the real world. One very interesting thing that happened over the last couple of days, in fact, I was out in the city doing my usual thing. I was walking around and doing things. And then I came back to the hotel, and when I walked into the lobby, there was a man sitting in a sofa or a chair that's in the lobby area. And he stood up when I came in, and he walked up to me and he said, he greeted me and said, "Hello, I'm one of your subscribers to your YouTube channel." And as he explained to me, he doesn't actually live in Medan. He lives in another town outside of Medan, but he came into the city to do some shopping in the lead up to the Chinese New Year holidays. And he saw one of my videos where I was talking about being ill, some kind of a mild, food poisoning, whatever it was that I had. And he decided to drop by, check up on me, and he brought me a care package. Really amazing, really great guy, really friendly, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the gesture. He brought me a whole package of items, thinking that, well, I don't speak Indonesian, so I might have difficulty finding medicine for myself. So he brought me some cold remedy, which actually has a lot of the good stuff that I end up looking for. Like I end up with terrible colds quite often, and like a runny nose really bothers me. I end up unable to sleep because of that, and the whole thing just snowballs. And I know there are certain medicines out there that are really effective at like drying up your nasal cavities. And this one, for example, I've never seen this brand before. It's called Stop Cold, and it has paracetamol, pseudoephedrine, and chlorphenamine maleate, as well as some other things. And I know those names, and they work quite effectively. So I have some cold remedy now, which is great. Some paracetamol for fever, headaches, toothaches, and reducing pain in general. This product, Entrostop, is for diarrhea and food poisoning. I believe it kind of reduces the symptoms when you get sick to your stomach. It's not an antibiotic, of course, but it is something that helps you feel better, so that's great. And a heat pack helps to relieve pain, so like sore muscles, things like that. And I can't show these because I've already consumed them, but he brought me some yogurt, and the yogurt, he said, contains probiotics, which will help me recover, restore my gut bacteria, get all that healthy bacteria brewing down there, and making me feel better. So yeah, thank you very much to that Planet Doug subscriber for making the effort to do all of this for me, track down all these items, and then come to the hotel and check up on me. And he was waiting in the lobby for me to come back. So that was big effort, a big thing to do on his part, and I appreciate it very much. Something else that is on my mind right now, it was on my mind last night, and I found myself thinking about it all throughout the night because I'm a very light sleeper. I don't really sleep. I kind of drift in and out of sleep, and then every time I'm more out of sleep, my brain starts ticking over. I'll even, turn on a podcast and listen to the podcast until I kind of drift off back into sleep again. And anyway, all last night I was thinking about this, and it started when I was chatting with a friend of mine online, and he happens to be in a foreign country, and he needs to go from one city to another, and he decided to rent a car. I guess there were various options for getting from A to B, but in this case, a whole bunch of details, a whole bunch of circumstances, it made sense for him to rent a car. and he's going to drive, and he can drop off the rental car at his destination. So, you know, the first thing that made me think of is like, hey, road trip. You know, he's in a foreign country. You know, it's a very modern, organized kind of place. So, you know, it's not like he's riding through the mountains of Afghanistan or anything like that, but it is a very foreign country in terms of the culture, and I assume he's never driven a car there before. So yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. It is a trip. It's going to be a bit of a road trip. So, you know, we were chatting about that. And then I made a comment to him about, hey, you better brush up on your Kerouac, you know, the famous author from the United States. He wrote a very, you know, cult classic book called On the Road. And I just made a joke about, I was trying to think of any kind of road trip associations, and the first one that popped into my head was Kerouac. And, you know, there are a whole bunch of other very famous books about, you know, road trips. And so anyway, I mentioned Kerouac. And then because of that, I thought, well, yeah, I'll refresh my memory about this, because I've read the book, of course. I used to be a great reader. The last few years, very little reading going on. I blame it on YouTube, but you know, I used to be a great reader, and I read Kerouac, of course. So I went to the Wikipedia entry on Jack Kerouac, and I read through the whole thing. And that really brought back a lot of memories for me, because I don't remember how old I was. I was young, in my teens, probably in my 20s by the time I discovered Kerouac. I think I was a late bloomer in terms of knowing anything. In my early childhood, I knew nothing about anything. I was not exposed to the world in any way until I kind of set out on my own. You know, went to university for my first year of university, and then, you know, my brain exploded, and I started a series of life events that exposed me to everything out there in the world that I really didn't know much about all through, you know, my, you know, grade school and into high school, because yeah, I just didn't have that kind of a life. I wasn't exposed to very much. So I had a lot of catching up to do. And I remember the feeling when I came across On the Road. Who knows how I got there? I mean, I was busy reading everything I could get my hands on. And you know how that works. You know, reading one book about one author, and that leads you to another book and another author, and that leads you to, you know, music you've never heard of, leads you to poetry, leads you to philosophy. I mean, all these things connect, they all come together. And somehow I ended up being brought to this book On the Road, and I read it, and it was, you know, a lot of things from that time in my life, it was like a personal earthquake, like discovering this whole new world and learning about all these things I knew nothing about. So I'd never heard of Jack Kerouac. I'd never heard of On the Road. I didn't know about the Beat Generation. You know, I didn't know about Allen Ginsberg. I didn't know about any of these people. You know, I didn't know about jazz. I didn't know about beat poetry. This was all a brand new world to me. But the whole idea of living a life on the road full of irregularities and new discoveries, I mean, that kind of spoke to me. And anyway, I just dove into On the Road, and I read it, and that led to reading more and more and more books from other authors from the Beat Generation. I'm not really into poetry, but you know, I got my hands on beat poetry, and I'm learning about that, and then the music that they listen to, and you know, William S. Burroughs. Like all the characters in On the Road were based on real people that Jack Kerouac knew, that were all part of the Beat Generation. So anyway, I was going down this rabbit hole, remembering that particular mental earthquake that happened in my life. And it got me thinking about all of the other mental earthquakes that were part of my life in that period. Because as I said, I knew nothing. Everything that entered my life was a new thing for me. And so I started thinking about that period. And, you know, for example, I stumbled across the Russian authors. So, you know, I read all the Dostoevsky I could get my hands on. I read every Tolstoy book, Solzhenitsyn, Pushkin, on and on and on. I went through a Russian author phase, and all I did was read the next book. You look up Dostoevsky and you read, the brothers Karamazov, and oh wow, now I have to read the next book and the next, and then you start thinking about Tolstoy. You read Tolstoy. And that was another, it's like learning about all of that, and then reading up on Russian history. The Soviet Union leads you into so many other, fields of thought, things I knew nothing about. And then there was a period of reading Dickens, classic Victorian novels, reading Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters and Dickens, and on and on and on. And one author leads to another, to another, to another. And then there were periods of musical discovery. I remember when I had a complete shelf of nothing but sets of classical music, the complete works of Beethoven, the complete works of Mozart, the complete works of Bach. And then I was just diving into all that music, listening to it all the time, learning about symphonies and orchestras. And again, another mental earthquake of discoveries. There are other things. You meet people in your life and they introduce you into things. So I would meet someone who's really heavily into wine, and then suddenly I'm sampling bottles of wine from France and Australia and New Zealand and the United States, and all the different vintages and the types of wines, and that's a whole new world to discover. And then I get into movies, watching every movie I can get my hands on. And this is all happening back in whatever, the 70s, 80s, 90s, into the early 2000s perhaps. And yeah, into the 2000s. What do you call that decade? I never quite know. And at that time, when it came to things like music and movies, there was like this possibility of you being able to learn about all of them. So like, if you start in the 90s and you start watching all the 90s movies, and then you watch all the 80s movies, and then you go back in time and watch all the classics, going all the way back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, the Wilder, Humphrey Bogart, the Hepburns, all the classic movies from the old days, right up through the 60s and 70s, 80s, 90s. It felt like you could actually learn about all the movies in the world. And then same thing with literature. It kind of felt like you could make a list of all the authors you should know about, the 1,000 books that every literate person should read, and you start working through that list. And it feels like you're working your way towards a point where you've learned everything there is to know, and now you're preparing for a future life that is going to begin. And I only mention that angle to it because it does feel very different these days, where the world of everything has exploded. Like there is no possibility for a person born now to get caught up, because there are too many movies now, too much music. I mean, the flood of media that's being produced now, nobody could ever feel like they ever had a handle on it. I mean, I gave up on literature. I mean, I was really more into classic literature from the past, because now, I mean, modern books that are being, that have been published in the last few decades, so many books have been written and published. No one on earth could ever, you don't have enough time to read them all. You could never have the feeling like, I've read all the great books of the world. There are too many great books of the world now. But it did feel like when I was in my 20s and 30s, you had this feeling like you could learn about things, like music. I mentioned classical music, but then I was in a situation one time where someone I met introduced me to the world of folk music. And I didn't know about folk music, to be honest, so this person happened to have a library of vinyl, like the complete works of Bob Dylan. And I don't know if I was quite this dumb at that time, but I probably was. I probably said, "Who's Bob Dylan?" And they would be like, "What? You've never," I was that dumb. Joan Baez, all of the the great folk artists, and I learned about all of that music, and then getting into Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and I'm still reading books and one day you stumble across your first Vonnegut. 3 months later you come up for air because you've been doing nothing but reading Kurt Vonnegut for 3 months. All of this was going on for so long, and I was thinking about that period of time and all of the discoveries and this intensity of the life, the internal life that I was leading. And then of course that extends into learning about the world when I started having opportunities to go to other countries. And then of course your brain just really explodes. And again, I knew nothing about the world. I knew nothing about geography, about history, nothing at all, when I went to university. And then you start learning about all the other parts of the world, music from other countries, culture, novels, literature, everything from there, on and on and on. And after I kind of went down this mental rabbit hole talking about the first times for everything, and then you can extend that to like personal relationships, your first time with a slow dance with a woman, your first kiss, all of these, to a young man, you can barely handle the emotions of all of this going on. There's so much intensity, so much passion. The first times for all of these things. And then I started thinking about how I feel now, and then how I've felt for a long time. And it does seem like that eventually stops. And I was wondering, is this a sad thing, or is it just the natural progression of the human life? Because I cannot remember right now the last time I felt like that. I just stopped feeling that way. And to be honest, sitting here now, I can't imagine feeling that way ever again. Like, I don't feel like I could ever stumble across a field of knowledge, a new writer, a new type of music that's ever going to affect me in the same way, in the way that it did when I was younger. And I think part of it is life. I think maybe young people don't really appreciate it. I certainly did not. I didn't realize how much free time I had as a student. I had so much time, so much energy just to think and think and think and explore and learn and read and listen to music. And that was my entire life. And then eventually, of course, real life takes over and you get a job, and suddenly life becomes about trivia, about paying the rent, about shopping for food, about just details. And then if you start doing a lot of traveling, there's like an avalanche of trivia. When is your visa expiring? Oh, I've got to renew my passport. Oh, I've got to get a job. I've got to earn money. I've got to go to work. I've got to go home. I've got to sleep, rest up. I wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off. I commute to work, and I work all day. I go home again. Oh, my work visa expiring. I got to go to immigration. Oh, I got to get this form. Oh, I got to go to HR. I remember a job I had in Taiwan was like the ultimate expression of this, because the company started sending me out. It was like an English teaching company. They published books for teaching English. And they started sending me out to schools to give presentations and talks and be a guest judge at their English speaking contests, things like that. But of course, every time I left the office, I had to clock in and clock out, and I'm clocking in early, clocking out late. And then I'm paying for train tickets and hotel tickets, and I have to keep receipts, and I have to get reimbursed, and I got to keep records of everything. The paperwork was just overwhelming, and it was just trivia upon trivia. And 10 years goes by, and you've never experienced that mental earthquake of discovery and passion and excitement anymore. It all just disappears because you're tired all the time. And life just becomes monotony to an extent. So thinking back to those old decades of my youth, I think I had this idea that I was preparing for something. I had to learn about all of this stuff. And once I amassed all of this knowledge that I needed, then real life would begin. My real life would start. Like I'm armoring myself with all of my knowledge of, you know, whatever, literature and music and the world and history and geography. And like there's all this stuff to learn and to be exposed to. And now, okay, I know what's going on now, and then real life would begin. But I think in my case, when I got to that point, the life I was expecting to start never happened. Because I don't think there is any kind of a life to prepare for. And this is my theory about this, that the normal process for human beings is to go through that time of discovery and passion and learning, and then that kind of leads up to when you get married, and then that's when all of that drops off, like a switch gets thrown in your brain. But it doesn't matter, because you've begun this new life of raising a family, and you get to experience all of that discovery all over again, but through the eyes of your children. I see that with people that I've known in my life who are my age, and then when they got married, and you look at their social media posts, and 90% of it is of living life through the eyes of their children and sharing their own passions with their children. So it would be like someone like me who, you know, I discovered the world of Mozart, and if I got married and had children, at some point I would want to share that discovery with my children. And they, oh, do you know about Mozart? And we could, you know, listen to Mozart, you know, together, whatever, or, you know, Led Zeppelin, you know, Bob Dylan, you know, and then maybe my son is reading his first Dostoevsky, and I'm like, oh, that is so exciting. So I think the normal evolutionary flow for a human being is to go through that life, that period of passion and discovery and learning, and then you have children, and then you get to sort of relive it all over again, and then you kind of slide into the end of your life. Someone like me, I jumped out of that path. You know, I've never had any interest in children. Not 1 second of my entire life did I ever imagine children. It's just, I have no interest for me whatsoever. So that whole life was never an option. It was never going to happen. I never wanted it to happen. But then you sort of end up on your own, and then it's like, okay, this life that I thought I was preparing for, what is it? And it doesn't ever really start, you know? And I have to say that, in a way, you know, YouTube, you know, this is a YouTube video, I'm editing YouTube videos, I'm thinking about YouTube videos. The amount of trivia involved in the life of a YouTuber is kind of overwhelming. So even my YouTube channel, which obviously is not a popular one in any way, but even what I'm doing on YouTube consumes all of my time, all of my thoughts, all of my energy. And there really is no time left over to read, to listen to music, to do anything except YouTube. But of course, I mean, YouTube does have benefits for me. One of the main things I love about making YouTube videos, it's very similar to doing photography or writing a journal or writing letters, is that it gives you a inspiration to go out exploring. You end up doing a lot of things for your YouTube video because, yeah, I mean, that's just the way things are. Like maybe today I want to go out and go somewhere, and then one of the reasons I want to go look at this place is because I can shoot a YouTube video about it. So it does push you out into the world and into living. But it's nowhere near the level of what I remember of, you know, my young life and learning and discovering everything, new experiences for the first time, you know. And I don't anticipate ever feeling that way again, which again, I don't know. Is that sad, or is it just the way things are, and I should just appreciate that I had that time of my life? You know, I did have all of that. And in a way, I think there's an illusion at work here. Like when you read a book like On the Road, and you read about Moriarty. What's his name? Dean Moriarty. You know, he's not the narrator of the story, but he's kind of the hero of the story because he's the rebel who's like rejecting social norms and living a life of excitement and discovery. And then when you read that book, you think, wow, so inspirational. That's how you should live your life. But of course, the book ends when all these people are still in their 20s. Right? They still have the rest of their life to live, and who knows what's going to happen from that point on. These books are written by young people about being young people, and they don't cover the last 60% of your life. So who knows what would happen to the heroes of On the Road, you know, in the future. And even when you get into like romance, like romantic comedies, of course, they all, you know, they're all about the passion of love and falling in love and finding the person you want to spend the rest of your life with and getting married. You know, they end with the two star-crossed lovers finally get together, and wow, isn't it amazing? But of course, that's where the movie ends. I'm a big fan of YouTube reaction channels, so I love to watch people watching movies. And for whatever reason, I ended up watching this reaction video to Crocodile Dundee. And this is a younger person, a millennial, who has never heard of any of the classic movies of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. These are all brand new to her. I find that quite interesting, by the way, you know, just the cliche of the passage of time. Because, you know, I think of, you know, a movie such as, you know, Jaws. To me, it's a modern movie. But when you think about it, like, what year did Jaws come out? I just looked it up, and it's worse than I thought. Jaws came out in 1975, which makes it almost 50 years old. 49, it came out 49 years ago. So for someone today to watch Jaws for the first time, I mean, it would be like me in the 80s, you know, watching a movie from the 30s, right? I mean, that is absolutely insane to me. Like, Jaws is a modern movie in my mind, but to someone today, it's 50 years old. So it's, you know, it's like me watching, you know, not even Casablanca, because I don't think even Casablanca was 50 years old when I watched it. And yet for me, you know, Casablanca was an old black and white movie. And yet Jaws, in relative terms, is older than Casablanca was when I watched it. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. But anyway, setting that aside, people told her, oh, you got to watch Crocodile Dundee because it's a classic comedy from that time period. You'll love it. So, you know, she watched it, and these are very short little things. I enjoy them. And she watched Crocodile Dundee, and of course, we've got the classic kind of star-crossed lovers. You've got, you know, the crocodile hunter from Australia who has never ever been anywhere in the world. He's never left his little outback town. Very rough, tough kind of guy, uncultured, unsophisticated. And then you've got the New York socialite from a wealthy family. And of course, they come from entirely different worlds, but by the end of the movie, they fall in love. And the movie ends with, you know, this very cheesy, very effective scene, very funny scene, but it's very cheesy, where Crocodile Dundee is on a subway platform, and then the woman is running after him because she realized that he's the love of her life, and she's shouting across hundreds of people on the platform, you know, I love you. And then they're going to get married and live happily ever after, and that's where the movie ends. But of course, the real story, that's really where it just begins, because realistically, these two people are so different. They can never live together. It's impossible. Like, as soon as they try, I mean, the movie gives the illusion that true love will win over in the end, but there's not a chance, because these two people come from such different worlds that where are they going to live? You know, are they going to go back to that outback place, and then Crocodile Dundee will just go out every night to the bar, get drunk and get in a knife fight, and then go out in the bush and hunt for crocodiles. What's she gonna do in that village? You know, she's a world famous journalist from a wealthy family. You know, it's like she can't live there for very long. Crocodile Dundee's not going to be happy living in a luxury condo in New York and going out to cocktail parties. You know, it's not going to work out. But of course, these movies give the illusion that it will. And a lot of these, you know, on the road stories about youth and passion and discovery, they always end while they're still very young, and they don't actually tell the story of, well, what happens in 50 years when you don't have anything to rebel against anymore. And as a man, you know, in your 50s and 60s, like, what's the point? You know, you've achieved some perspective on the world, let's say, and all these things that you were so passionate about in terms of changing the world that, you know, made up your youth seem a little bit silly in retrospect. Anyway, that was what was keeping me awake last night. Just had these thoughts rolling over in my mind. And to be honest, I did end on this note of, I don't know, maybe YouTube really is a problem in my life just because of the time commitment involved in that form of media. Like, video takes a lot of time. It just does. And maybe that is a serious problem that should be addressed. You know, like, if you take away that massive time commitment, you know, maybe here on Planet Doug, you know, some passion for literature would start to bubble again, you know. All right, enough of that story. Let's move on to something else. I have another very typical Planet Doug story to tell, and this involves my struggle with the world of information, and how, in my experience, people in general can be very imprecise. And I'm a big fan of precision. And this stuff just, oh man. Of course, when you go overseas, you go to other countries, I mean, it's a fact of daily life. You know, you've also got the language barrier to deal with, and you're trying to get information. And then it seems like nobody knows anything. And then when people do tell you things, they always tell you the wrong things, or they're telling you things you didn't need to know while ignoring the things you did need to know. I mean, I've just been watching videos from Bald and Bankrupt and Backpacker Ben. I'll talk about those in a minute, I suppose. But, you know, they tried to take, well, they took a train up to Quetta, from Karachi to Quetta, and they had train tickets. I don't think they showed how they bought the tickets, but they had the train tickets. And then they went to the train station, and it seemed like there was 3 hours of them just trying to figure out what platform the train arrived on, and nobody knew. You know, I guess there were two platforms. There's platform 1, platform 2, and then there were 3 of them, you know, Bald and Simon Wilson and Backpacker Ben, and all 3 of them went off in different directions, and then they would come together from time to time to compare notes, and they're all asking people, oh, showing them their ticket, and it's like, oh, we have the train to Quetta, is it here or on that platform? Is it platform 1, platform 2? And the guy says, oh, here, platform 1. But somebody told Backpacker Ben, no, it's on platform 2, and someone told Simon Wilson something else. And they did for 3 hours. They just went around and around and around. They'd go over to platform 2 because they concluded, well, that must be, I think this is where the train is. And then everyone tells them, oh, no, not platform 1. And they're like, what? You know, they talk to the officials at the train station, you know, the ticket sellers, you know, people on the platform who speak English, and every single person gives them a different answer or changes their answer, and you start to wonder after a while, why? How is it so difficult to know the platform that this train is arriving at? It happens, this train leaves probably every day. Surely people who work at the train station know which is the correct platform, right? Somebody must know. How is it so difficult to figure these things out, you know? But again, it's an eternal mystery. Anyway, I'm here making some travel arrangements, and for very complicated reasons, I've been changing my plans, and now I'm thinking about taking the ferry because I'm going to Malaysia next, and I'm thinking about taking the ferry back to Malaysia. And I originally dismissed this idea, and it's the complicated logistical reasons, because I have a visa on arrival. And not only do I have a visa on arrival, I got this visa on arrival online. I paid for it through their new online portal, and then I extended my visa on arrival for another 30 days, also online. And this is a new system. And I know from experience that even in the old days, like when you arrive at the port or arrive at the airport and you get your visa on arrival in person, some airports can do it, but others can't. Same thing for seaports. Some can give you a visa on arrival. They have that ability. Others don't. But over the last few years, I learned, and I had the experience, so I have firsthand experience of this, that if you take the ferry to Duma, you can get a visa on arrival when you arrive. But in the old days, like pre-COVID, if you took the ferry to Tanjung Balai, which is the port town near Medan, you have to have a visa already in your passport, because you can't get a visa on arrival at Tanjung Balai. So I'm aware of this issue. And if you go to the official Indonesian government website where they talk about visa on arrival, they list all the airports where you can get a visa on arrival, and they list all the seaports. And Tanjung Balai, Asahan, because there's two Tanjung Balais, there's one in Karimun. There you can get a visa on arrival, but at Tanjung Balai, Asahan, this one, you can't. So it's always been clear to me that you cannot go to Tanjung Balai and get a visa on arrival. However, things have changed now. This is the post-COVID world. We've got online visa on arrival, so you don't even have to get it at the dock anymore, right? You can get it online. So what does that mean for Tanjung Balai? Plus, what does it mean for leaving from Tanjung Balai? See the difference? Okay, you cannot arrive at Tanjung Balai and get a visa on arrival, but what if you get your visa on arrival at Duma and then you exit from Tanjung Balai? So you can't arrive on a visa on arrival, but maybe you can leave on a visa on arrival, because after you get your visa on arrival, it's just a visa stamp in your passport with an expiry date on it. You should be able to exit from any port, right? So this was my question, right? So yesterday, I wanted to get an answer to this question, because I don't want to go to Tanjung Balai, buy a ticket for the ferry, go to the dock, the day before my visa expires, and then the immigration officer looks at my passport and says, oh no, you have a visa on arrival. You can't exit from this dock. You have to go to the airport. And that would be very problematic. So I want to clear this up in advance. So I contacted the ferry company, which you can do these days, which is very great. You can actually chat with them on WhatsApp. You can send messages, send emails. Anyway, so I went on to WhatsApp and I asked the ferry company my question. And I was as precise as I can make it, because I love precision in language. And I explained, I'm in Indonesia. I got a visa on arrival online, and then I got a visa on arrival extension also online. And now my question is, can I take the ferry from Tanjung Balai? Can I go through immigration with this online visa on arrival? Can they deal with it at immigration in Tanjung Balai? And I was very, very clear about my question. And then the guy wrote back to me, and he says, quoting, "Yes, yes, and you are absolutely obliged to pay visa on arrival before going to Indonesia, sir." And I'm like, what does that mean? That's not what I'm asking. I know I have to pay for the visa on arrival, before I come to Tanjung Balai. I know that. I was pretty clear that I'm in Indonesia. I'm talking about going to Malaysia. I'm talking about leaving Indonesia. What is the situation leaving with a visa on arrival that I got online? And he said, oh, you have to buy one before you come. I'm like, okay, yeah, I already knew that, so that doesn't really help me out. So I wrote back to him, and I said to the guy, or woman, I don't know who it was, and I explained, okay, yeah, I know that. What I want to know is, and I repeated my question, and then he replied, yes, sir, waiting before departure is directed to pay the VOA. So again, he's telling me that I have to pay for the visa on arrival before departure. So it basically repeats the first sentence, and I'm like, well, now are you talking about departure from Indonesia or departure from Malaysia to come here? Now it got even more confusing, so I have to write back again and say, well, sorry to bother you, but I'm not talking about paying for a visa on arrival. I already have it. I want to know whether I can depart with your ferry. Like, I know you don't work for immigration, it's not your job to know these things, but I thought, maybe you have experience and you can, maybe I just thought I'd take a chance and ask. And then this guy, in response to my last question, then he said that he would check with immigration for me. So after my third repetition of my question, he said, okay, I'll go talk to immigration in person and I'll let you know in a few minutes. And I was like, wow, amazing customer service. And I'd write back to him, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This is really important to me. Thank you. And then I never heard from him again. Like he said he would get back to me in a few minutes, and then the whole day went by and I got no response, and then I waited all night long and no response. And now I'm thinking, well, now what do I do? And I'm thinking, how many times can I bother this poor guy? I can understand that. Again, for me, I'm very focused on customer service. If I were in his position, helping a customer, and I said I would go to immigration or I would call immigration, and then it turns out that I couldn't get hold of anyone, and basically I have to wait until the next day, I would tell the customer that. I would say, I told him I'll get back to you in a few minutes. And then if I said that, well, and I find out I can't get the information, I would go back online and say, oh, sorry, sir, there's no one at immigration right now. I can't get hold of them today. I will try again tomorrow morning. Okay. Now I can get some sleep at night because I know what's going on. But he just never replied. So now this morning I woke up and I'm thinking, I hate bothering people. It really bothers me to bother people. I don't want to keep coming back and sending another message asking for clarification and more information, But I am trying to train myself to get over that, particularly as I'm getting older, where if something is important to me, then just do it. Like, I really need to know this information, and I need to know now. So, I'm trying to train myself to be like one of those, those old crotchety senior citizens who doesn't care what anybody thinks of them anymore. They've long since stopped worrying about social niceties, and if they have an opinion, they just say it. So I'm trying to train myself. I'm probably being too sensitive that about bothering this guy. Who knows? So anyway, I convinced myself to just I should write back to him, but then I didn't because I didn't want to bother him. I thought I'd just give him some time, because, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 10:30, I'm just sort of waiting, like maybe they're not at work yet, the office isn't open, who knows. So I'm giving him some time. And I did write another message, but I wrote it late in the day yesterday. And, sort of like, I'm sorry to bother you again, but, because he never got back to me. And I said, have you had a chance to get in touch with immigration? Any news, anything you can tell me? And then I never heard from him. But then again, this morning, I decided to wait. And then eventually, he did reply, and this morning, and this was to my question from yesterday, where I repeated everything, and he said, "You may leave, sir, before your VOA ends." So this is my first positive indication that this is possible, but I still don't like it because it doesn't really reassure me that he knows what I'm talking about. And I tried to explain it to him. I even sent him a copy of my visa extension document. Because when you get a visa extension online now, you don't get a stamp in your passport. You get a PDF, and you download the PDF to your phone. So when I go to the immigration window and I hand the guy my passport, it looks like I've overstayed my visa by 30 days. And then I said, no, I got a PDF here. Here's a PDF, there's my visa extension. And he's, maybe the guy's he won't know about this, and he's gonna, like, what are you talking about? Look at your passport, So what I really want is some indication from this guy that he knows what I'm talking about. I even sent him a copy of my downloaded PDF, and I says, okay, I don't have a stamp in my passport. This is what I have, a downloaded document, and you can see the visa extension expiry date, that's all there, but I don't have this in my actual passport. Like, I want to make that absolutely clear. And then in his reply, he doesn't really give me any indication that he understood any of that, or that he conveyed any of that information to the immigration officer. And then, anyway, I was going to go with this. He says, oh, he finally said something positive. And then I replied to that and again said, oh, that's great news. Thank you very much. And then he wrote back and said, that's right, sir. I'm waiting for his arrival. And now I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Like, I'm waiting for his arrival has no connection to anything we'd been talking about up until this point. Like, I thought he had already spoken to the immigration officer. That's why he told me, oh, everything's okay. You can come here. Your VOA is valid. That's what I thought he was saying. But now he's saying, I'm waiting for his arrival. And I'm like, whose arrival? Like, are you at immigration, but there's nobody there, and you're waiting for the guy to come in from his, like, what are you? So now I don't understand what this means. And I'm in a situation of like, do I bother the guy again? Like, I don't know who are you waiting for? Is this important? Like, anyway, so we just go around and around and around and around. Oh, it's so funny. The world of getting information can be such a complicated one. And in the modern world, to be honest, precision is more and more and more important. Like, there's no flexibility on computers, right? If it says something on your computer, that's just on your computer record. That you can't argue. They're not going to make an exception. There's no leeway, It's not an informal world. Everything is exact now. And yet somehow getting exact information can really be a struggle, Of course, language barrier, you've always got to take that into account, but there's definitely more going on here than just language barrier, I yearn for more precision in the world when communicating with people, I really do. So for the Planet Doug channel, there's not a lot going on. My last big video, to be honest, was just the video where I went to the burger restaurant. But on that day, as I talked about already, I was walking back to my hotel and I stopped off at the military museum and I stopped off at a coffee shop. And then the day after that, I went to a noodle shop, and the noodle shop was supposed to be famous. So I thought, oh, I have to have lunch. So I'll go have lunch and I'll shoot a video about it, kill two birds with one stone. So I had raw video of those three experiences, the military museum, the coffee shop, and the noodle shop. And I thought I shot those videos as single videos. It wasn't like a continuous experience. So I was going to make a short video about the military museum, short video about the coffee shop, short video about the noodle shop. And I knew they're not going to be exciting videos. Nobody's going to care about them one way or the other, but I have the video. Because it is a funny thing on YouTube. Here in these BTS videos and in my conversations with other YouTubers, we do talk a lot about why videos are popular and why some are popular and some are not. Why did this video get 100,000 views or 1 million views? And this other video, which is so much better than these ones, nobody watched it and it gets like 200 views. Like, what is going on exactly? We talk about this a lot. And there was one video on my channel recently where I took the ferry from Duma to Port Dickson. So the last time I returned to Malaysia, I returned by boat. And on that day, I was just done with YouTube. I had no energy. I just didn't have, I had so many videos to edit from Sumatra. I think I had like a backlog of, 30 videos that I hadn't finished editing. And I thought, well, if I shoot another video about taking the ferry, that's one more video that I have to edit, and it's going to take 2 days to finish, and I just wasn't in the mood. So that video, I barely shot any video at all. A little bit as I rode my bike to the dock, and then when I was on the boat, I didn't do anything. I didn't shoot any 360 video. I never even left my seat. I sat in my seat on the boat for the whole trip, and then I shot a little bit of video when I arrived, and I put no effort into it at all. Editing, I put in no effort at all. It was like the laziest, worst video I've made for the past 5 years, and yet that video has been viewed more times than any of my other videos. Just like, what? Like, who knows? It's just like, you just don't know. Like I don't know whether people watched the video for a long time. That's the other metric, right? I mean, you can have, for me getting 20,000 views on a video, that's a high number, but maybe all 20,000 people clicked on it because of the subject, but after 2 minutes they went, oh, this is stupid, and they stopped watching. That could be true. I haven't looked at the analytics, but I mean, technically there are like 20,000 views or something like that, which is, 10 times more than any of my other videos from Sumatra, the ones that I put in so much effort into and nobody watched. This video, which I just slapped it together and I was barely even awake, that got 10 times more views than the other video. So you just don't know. So anyway, I was thinking about that, and I was here in my room. I had a bit of time, so I thought, okay, why don't I just do these videos? So I did edit the military museum. I uploaded it. It's already on YouTube, and it's scheduled for to go live. And I edited the coffee shop video, which is even worse than the military museum video. And the noodle shop, I haven't edited it yet. I may do it, I may not. So that's pretty much all that's going on Planet Doug right now. And the last couple of days, any time I've spent on my channel has just been, I've been trying to get caught up with replying to some comments, because I've been so busy lately and I haven't been keeping up with comments the way I normally do. So I've been going back in time and looking for video comments where people ask me questions and there's something to talk about, things like that. So that's what's going on Planet Doug. I have a bunch of YouTube stories to breeze through. The first one is about Brendan Kavanagh, kind of an update. I talked about this in my last video. Brendan Kavanagh is the UK pianist, and he had an interaction with a group of people from China who, like kind of a tour group and a television studio crew. They were filming a video in a public space where Brendan Kavanagh was playing a piano, and then the group of people from China. There was a really weird, long, complicated interaction between the two of them, between Brendan and this group, that I won't go into the details. It's just way too complicated. But they did ask him to stop filming them because he was filming himself on the piano and they were sort of in the background. And then they came over to talk to him. And while they were talking to him, he kept filming a live stream. So these people from China were in his video. But then something happened where they decided they didn't want to be in his video, and they spoke to him and asked him, demanded, threatening legal action, calling the police and getting very angry and telling Brendan to, delete us from your video and you don't have our permission to put our faces on your YouTube video. And they threatened legal action if he does. And it turned into this huge thing. The video went viral. It's all over the world. Everybody's talking about it. And the update I wanted to mention was that there was another video where people were doing deep dives into the video and trying to identify all the people from China. And they identified a bunch of the main players, and I talked about that video already, but then there was a new video where they identified another member of the group who was really far in the background, and it turns out that this woman had been exposed by MI5 as a spy for China. This person, there's actually a newspaper article about this person, who she is, what she's doing in the UK, what her position is, her job, or her affiliation with some Chinese organization or the embassy. And there was a journalist investigated this person and got information from MI5 that she had been exposed as an official agent of the CCP in China. So that was, the latest update to the story, which I found quite interesting. And the theory is that this group of people from China, at the beginning, they were happy to interact with Brendan. They were even dancing beside his piano. One of the men from the group sat down at the piano and was playing music. So they were having a and Brendan even shook hands with this Chinese woman. So everything was fun, everything was fine. But then we saw this other woman show up in the background, the, alleged spy. And after this woman showed up, then everything changed. And then they started getting angry and demanding that he remove the footage, and and the whole thing exploded from that point. So people are now theorizing that this woman in authority, the spy, the official agent, she's the one who then talked to the group and said, hey, this is not allowed. And then she started the whole interaction. That may or may not be true. But anyway, the story is still growing. Brendan Kavanagh himself is really getting into it. He's really being overly dramatic, to be honest. He's posting video after video after video, really keeping the story alive. And it's a little bit of over-the-top drama from his point of view, but it's really a fascinating story. I found it quite interesting. Another YouTube channel I suddenly became interested in is this one. I believe he's a Canadian. I'm not sure if he lives in Thailand, but his YouTube channel does seem to be based in Thailand. but he's from Canada. Maybe he lives in both Canada, Thailand, I'm not sure. But yeah, he's a YouTuber. His channel is called Side Trip Life. And I became aware of him because he left a comment on one of my videos. And then if I see a comment on my video and I get the impression that this person is also a YouTuber, I usually click on their link and I like to go to their channel and find out who this person is and watch a bunch of their videos. And this guy was very, very interesting to me because, well, he's a fellow Canadian and he's traveling, he's making travel videos, and he came to Padang. So he went to the city of Padang in Sumatra, and I spent a long time there, and I posted, I don't know, 20 videos from the city of Padang, as well as, 20, 30 from nearby Bukit Tinggi. I spent a lot of time in that area, and then I found this guy. He's like, oh, he also went to Padang. So I watched his videos from there. And it was really kind of interesting because, well, it's interesting on many levels. From a lifestyle point of view, it's interesting because his YouTube channel is quite a bit more successful than mine. So I'm assuming it earns a lot more money. And I get the impression that with his life, he has a little bit more money to spend than I do. So I tend to be on the low budget end of things. And then he tends to be traveling at a little bit of a higher budget. So in Padang, he stayed in like a very nice hotel right on the ocean, and just sort of following everything that he did, one of my reactions was how easy everything was. And I do tend to make a bit of a meal out of all the difficulties that I face. I don't think I exaggerate anything. I just tell things exactly how they happened. But maybe I inject enough energy into the story that it sounds over the top. I don't know. But it does seem like everything I try to do ends up being a real struggle. And I find it really interesting and amusing to watch a video of someone doing pretty much the same thing I did, and yet it's just like a breeze, right? So when he landed this is a recent video, not the Padang video. He also came here to Medan, and I watched his video from Medan, from Lake Toba, things like that. So he arrived he flew from Bangkok to Medan, and then in his video, he walked into the same departure lounge, like the transportation building at the airport that I went into. And when I went into there were these machines to buy your train ticket, and my life turned into a big drama because you can't use cash. I couldn't buy a ticket. And it turned into this whole thing where, all the digital payment systems, I didn't have any of them. So it was like right out of the gate, I was going to take the airport express train into Medan, but I couldn't buy a ticket. I had to get someone else to buy the ticket for me and then give them money to reimburse them. And I couldn't even get on my train because all the trains are fully booked. And the only train I could get was at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I had to wait 2 to 3 hours before my train would even leave. And then when I got on the train, it was packed, and I couldn't find my seat because I'm looking for my car number and seat number, but I couldn't figure out the car numbering system. And then when I think I finally found my car, someone was already sitting in my seat, and then I didn't know what to do. Just like everything was a struggle. And then in his video, it was like he, walked through the airport. He showed the same machines where you had to buy a ticket, and then he jumped ahead to, okay, I have my ticket now. And I'm like, what? How did you get a ticket? How did you pay for it? And then he got on the train. He's like, okay, I'm on the train now. And he showed the video, the inside of the train. It was completely empty. The whole car, there was nobody in it. So he just had no trouble buying a ticket. He got a seat on the very next train, and then the train was completely empty. And then he got to the train station, He had no trouble leaving the train station because there's an escalator there. You ride the escalator down from the platform. But when I got there, the escalator was broken, and we all had to line up at the one elevator, and just this huge line of people with all their suitcases, because the elevator could only bring like 4 people at a time, down from the train platform, and I had to wait and wait and wait and wait. And anyway, every step of the way for me was a struggle. There was a problem. It was difficult. It was tiring. And for him, he just breezed all the way through it. I found that kind of funny. And then when he went to Padang, he stayed, at this hotel, fairly nice hotel, typical one, I don't know, 3, 4, I think it was like a 4-star hotel. I think it had, the swimming pool on the roof, the beautiful breakfast buffet. And then he wanted to get a scooter. And then I guess he just went online and just found a company. Oh, there's one. I want to rent a scooter. And then the company just showed up at his hotel. And they delivered the scooter right to his door. And then there it is. I mean, it was just like, bing, bing, bing. It was do, 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 do. Everything was so simple. Everything was so easy. And I'm just sort of watching the videos going, what? What is it? How can it be so easy for everyone else? And everything I do, I seem to run into barriers, of some kind. Anyway, I found all of that kind of amusing. But 2 other things about his video that I found interesting. I have a strong interest in camera gear and filming technique, and he did mention that he lost his GoPro. I guess he was using it on the plane on the Air Asia flight, and he put it in. I found this out later. He put it in the seat compartment. He was filming, I guess, out the window, and then he put it in the compartment. The slit on the back of the seat in front of him, I guess, and then he left the plane and he forgot it. So when he was in Padang, he didn't have his GoPro, and then he ended up shooting the whole video with his smartphone and an Insta360 Go 2. And I found that to be interesting. And then he rode his scooter down the coast of Sumatra, from Padang going south, and I rode up and down that coast road like many, many, many times. I did it multiple times. So watching his video was a lot of fun for me, because every village he went through, every corner he went around, every hill he went up or hill he went down, every village he stopped at, I knew all of them. I recognized everything he did and everything along the way. So that was really interesting. And then he did, for me, when I rode my scooter along there, I didn't know about the offshore islands. I didn't know about all these islands. You could hop on boats and do boat hopping tours. I didn't know all of that was there. I didn't even know that there was this beautiful coastline. It all came as a complete surprise to me. But he seemed to know more about it in advance, and he deliberately rented the scooter to go to this village where you could get a boat to take you out to the islands. And then that is what he did. And just watching the video, it didn't seem to be any problems. He had trouble finding the village. He went to one that he thought the boats left from, but it turned out it wasn't there. He had to go to another place. And I knew the place quite well. I went to the same village, Sungai Pisang, I called it. I don't know if that's the name of it, but that's the name of the river. So he kept calling the village Pisang. I knew it as Sungai Pisang. And then I went there too. I parked my scooter there, and all the men that were there were, oh, do you want to go to the islands? And at that time I didn't want to. I had a hotel reservation in the next town down the coast, and I wasn't that interested in going out to the islands anyway. I walked up and down the beach. I shot video of the cows on the beach and the dock and the nearby hills, and I talked about everything. So I recognized everything from his video, even the cows, the same cows, that I saw, he saw. But then the next thing I knew, he was on the boat, and then he had his own boat, like he rented a private boat, and then was just going island hopping and visiting all these beautiful islands, But it didn't seem to be any trouble for him. He just showed up, made a deal with the guy, hopped on the boat, went out to the islands, came back, and then rode his scooter, back to Padang. And at that point, I was so excited about watching the rest of his videos, because when he was in Padang, he rode his scooter across the famous bridge across the river in Padang. And then he did say something about how, oh, this bridge is so beautiful at night, and the river is all lit up at night. And he talked about, video about that at night. So I thought, really want to watch those videos. I wanted to see his videos about exploring the riverside in Padang, and I was really looking forward to that. But then it turned out that none of those videos were on his channel. And I was like, oh, what happened? Like, where did those videos go? I was really disappointed. But then I was reading some comments, and somebody asked him in a comment, like, where are your other videos from Padang? And then he, side trip life, he replied to that comment, and he said, well, he basically said that my audience is based mainly in Thailand, and he could look at the response to his Sumatra videos, like to his Padang video, and he could go into his analytics, and he concluded that nobody cares about those videos. So for him, he concluded that it isn't worth the time, that he shot the video, he had all this raw video of his experiences in Padang, but of course, it's going to take him many hours to finish editing the video and uploading them to YouTube, and he concluded that it just wasn't worth his time, because nobody knows about Padang, nobody cares about Padang. So if he posted all these videos about the river and all his experiences there, it would just be a waste of his time from a YouTube point of view, because nobody's going to watch them and he's not going to make any money from them. And I found that interesting, because I posted, I don't even remember anymore, but I might have posted 20 hour-long videos just from Padang. And of course, nobody really watched any of those videos. Nobody's interested in them. And yeah, the time commitment was considerable. It's kind of a disaster overall, because I was trying to edit videos at the time, but I couldn't even keep up, because I was going out every day on a new trip. Because I had the scooter and I wanted to take advantage. I was paying for the scooter every day, for a full month and a half or something like that. So I wanted to take advantage. So every single day I would hop on the scooter, go somewhere new, shoot video all day. So I was racking up, hours and hours, of video every single day, with no time left over to edit them. So by the time I left Sumatra and I went back to Malaysia because my visa expired, I spent 2 months in Malaysia doing almost nothing but editing the videos from Sumatra. I had so many videos to edit, it actually took me 2 months just to complete them. And that kind of really screwed up my life, because my plan was to travel around Malaysia for those 2 months. And I ended up just sitting in Port Dickson working on videos. And I shot a couple of videos in Port Dickson, and every video I shot in Port Dickson was another 2 days of video editing to finish those. So it all just kind of snowballed. And by the time I was done editing the videos from Sumatra, my Malaysia visa was expired and I had to leave the country again right away. So obviously I can learn from someone like a side trip life, because the way I did it was not very efficient in any way. I think the video of mine that he left a comment on was the video where I went to the Ramat International Wildlife Museum here in Medan. And then I did my usual Planet Doug approach, where I shot video of walking to the museum and looking at things in the neighborhood as I walked there. And then he called it slow travel. And I think I've heard of that before, but that phrase isn't really in my head, but I kind of like that phrase. Like, he calls what I do slow travel. And it's like, yeah, actually, that puts a positive spin on it, you know what I mean? But of course, from a YouTube point of view, from an entertainment value point of view, maybe slow travel is not the way to go, you know. But anyway, I found that quite interesting, and I have Side Trip Life in my list of things now to keep checking up on, because I just want to see, you know, the things that he does. And as I said, I already watched his video from Medan and Lake Toba, things like that. So I'm hoping, you know, just to watch his videos in the future and just keep track of everything that he's doing. There is another Itchy Boots video, but I don't think I have a whole lot to say about it. It's called Baaka, pygmy in brackets. A Baaka guide brings me into their forest full of wild elephants. And I watched the whole video, very entertaining. She's staying in this riverside jungle lodge in the Central African Republic. She just crossed the border into there, and I assume I know that she knew about this place way in advance, that she planned to stop there. I mean, she does look ahead and finds things that would be interesting to her viewers, and then plots her route to stop off in these places. So she knew about this place in advance. She didn't just stumble across it. But I guess the main thing about this is, you know, it's on the river, but nearby is a wild elephant area. I don't know if it's an official sanctuary, protected, or anything, but it was pretty amazing. She went out there with a guide from her lodge, I assume. They walked down a jungle trail, and they have a big building, kind of like a blind in a way, for visitors. You know, you climb up some stairs, and it overlooks this quite large empty field that Itchy Boots says that the elephants created themselves. So these are not savanna elephants, these are actual jungle elephants. And, you know, they live in the jungle, but this area, they come here all the time because there was a water source. And then over time, of course, the elephants just knocked over all the trees. And then because of their size and rolling around in the mud, you know, they created all of these pools, and then more and more water would gather. So now it's a place where every day these jungle elephants leave the jungle and they come to this big field, and they get, you know, they drink and they bathe in the water and they have fun there, you know, running around, and all the little elephants. Absolutely amazing video, really something. And then Itchy Boots, I guess the rule there is you have to be quiet. Like, I was surprised actually, like she's even walking down the jungle trail and there's like nothing there, it's just trees. But then she's recording in her video, she's like, well, so we're heading towards the sanctuary. You know, it's like, why are you whispering, you know? It seemed like, but I can understand that, like, if you're in such a quiet place, you would feel weird even speaking in your normal voice. But then, of course, when they got to the big blind, you know, this big platform, they're near the elephants, and I'm pretty sure the guide told her, like, we have to be really quiet so we don't disturb the elephants. So even when she's up there on the platform, she's like whispering really, really quietly, you know, talking about the elephants. I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, really entertaining video, really well done. Yeah, I liked it a lot. And she did say that it didn't rain. So it was like one of the first days in a long time where there was no rain. And the guy, one of the guys, the local guy that she was talking to, said that might be a sign that the rainy season is over. It's like the rainy season, it's just like it rains every single day. Rain, 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 rain. And then if you get to a day which is like no rain all day, like someone turned off a faucet, that could be the signal that, okay, the rainy season is done. And maybe her riding will get better from this point, not as much mud in the future, you know, but we will find out. Someone left a comment for me about Itchy Boots videos, and they mentioned that, you know, they seem to know a lot more about what she's doing and where her plans are for the future. And I was like, where are you getting all this information, I wondered. But it turns out that if you go to her website, Man, what an amazing website. I'm so jealous. So professionally done. So yeah, really, really efficient and really well done. Of course, she pays someone else to do it. So anyway, there on her website, if you create an account, like you sign up for the Itchy Boots full experience, then you will get her bi-monthly bulletin. And I always get confused about bi-monthly. I think that means once every 2 months, she sends out a bulletin, tells you, you know, like an email, you know, what she's doing and plans for the future. Or it could be twice a month. I never can remember what bi-monthly means, once every 2 months or twice a month. Anyway, but I have a feeling it would be once every 2 months. Itchy Boots wouldn't send out a bulletin twice a month. I think that would end up being too much work for her to do. But anyway, so I signed up. So now I'm waiting for my very first Itchy Boots bulletin. So that would be, I'm looking forward to that. That will be very exciting. Another new YouTube channel, at least new in terms of talking about it here on Behind the Scenes, is called Tread the Globe. And I think I knew about these people because they recently came to Malaysia and it showed up in my YouTube feed, and I watched one of their videos. They're like van life people, you know, a retired couple from the UK, and I guess they have lots of money to spend, and they decided to go around the world in a van. And they live in the van and they drive in the van, you know, so it's basically like, you know, anyone who's riding around the world on a motorcycle or whatever, but they're doing it in a van and documenting their journey on YouTube. Pretty popular channel as far as I can tell. I haven't done like a serious deep dive, but I think all their videos get, you know, hundreds of thousands of views, maybe in the range of 1 to 2 to 300,000 views, maybe averaging around 200,000. It's pretty impressive. But the reason someone pointed them out to me is that they were in Malaysia and they were stopped by the police, and they ended up, the video about that interaction with the police officer went viral. So this would be of interest to me, of course, because when Itchy Boots was in Nigeria, she posted a video where a Nigerian police officer stopped her on the road, like at an official checkpoint, asked her for money, and then Itchy Boots, you know, put that in her video, and it was in her thumbnail and video title as well, about police corruption. And that video went viral in Nigeria, and those police officers were fired because of that video. So I talked about that quite a bit in some previous videos, but now we've got this British couple, and the way it happened was they were pulled over, and this police officer came up to their window and told them that they were speeding. He showed them something on his phone, you know, the speed limit here is such and such. We clocked you at this speed, so you were speeding. So I'm going to give you a ticket. And he said, well, actually the driver of the van, the woman was driving at the time, and she was very apologetic and very polite. The man from UK was also very polite, and she said to the officer, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was speeding, and now what do I need to do? Okay, we were speeding. I'm very sorry about that. I didn't realize, and now what do we need to do? Would you like to see our documents, our papers, our customs documents, our driver's license, our passport? Like, what do you need from us?" And then the police officer said, well, the fine is 300 ringgit, and then you have to go to the police station and do something there and pay 300 ringgit. That's the fine. But then he said, however, if you want, you can just pay me 100 ringgit right now, and that's it. So basically your choice is to go to the police station, pay 300, or you can pay an on-the-spot fine of 100 ringgit, and that's the end of the matter. So of course the UK couple are like, oh, we'll go for option B, thank you very much. And then the man, I think, quickly gave his wife 100 ringgit, and she gave it to the police officer. Oh, here you are, here's 100 ringgit. And then the police officer walked away and says, okay, settled, have a nice day. And then I think the two UK people were like, huh, what? Like, that's all? Oh, that's great. You know, we're all done. Like, you don't need to see our documents. You don't have to give us a ticket. And he's like, no, it's all settled. And then he went away. And of course, a lot of people in the comments, Malaysian people, they're all saying, of course, that, oh, that is typical corruption by the Malaysian police officers, that you basically, you know, put 100 ringgit in his pocket, and you know, that this is corruption. And interestingly enough, like from a YouTube point of view, it's different from what Itchy Boots did, because, you know, the UK couple, they did put it in their thumbnail. So for the whole video, you know, they chose this one moment to feature in the thumbnail and the title, but they did it in a very different way. So they didn't assume it was corruption. They didn't put anything like that in the video title. Their video title was actually very, very neutral. And the title is, you know, UK van lifers stopped by the police in Malaysia. So when I watched the video, that's all I saw in the title, and I thought, oh, the police stopped them and gave them a ticket, because that's what I thought happened. But then you watch the video, and then the obvious conclusion is that, you know, they were the victim of some police corruption. But they didn't make that assumption in their video title. They just said, you know, they were stopped by the police, and they blurred out the face of the police officer. And so of course, you know, that's very different from what Itchy Boots did, because she put in her title, you know, police corrupt police officer demands money, and put a big photograph of the police officer in the thumbnail, and that led to him being fired. But of course, the UK couple, they didn't do any of that, but the video has been picked up locally. I guess it was in the news, and there's a newspaper article about it, and a lot of people have left comments saying that the police have begun an investigation, and the local police would like to speak to you. So, you know, the police are looking for this UK couple and they want to speak to them, so please come to the police station. You know, who knows what the police want to do. Maybe they want to see the original video, get their story of what happened, and perhaps this Malaysian police officer is going to be disciplined for what he did, you know, if he cannot, you know, defend himself, you know, for what happened, you know. So yeah, pretty interesting story. And made me smile, because I've often said that in these situations, I have trouble picking up on the fact that a police officer wants money. For some reason, I don't get the clues, I don't get the signals, and I go through this whole thing, and then eventually the police officer is just like, oh, for Pete's sake, get out of here. You know, they get impatient with me, they get frustrated, because I don't know what's going on, and I never, you know, get out my wallet and say, oh, you know, what if I give you some money? Will that take care of the situation? You know, I never pick up on the signals. But, you know, in this video, it's so obvious. It's even obvious to me, because it's such a classic situation. Even I could figure it out, that it's like, okay, well, you know, I can give you a ticket, or you can pay an on-the-spot fine. You know, I mean, that's a classic, you know, okay, it's 300 ringgit for the ticket, or on the spot, if you pay the fine in person right now, you only have to pay 100 ringgit. And even I, you know, dummy that I am, I would pick up on, oh, okay, that's corruption, you know, that's what is going on here. It's obvious, you know, even to a dummy like me, you know. So anyway, that was a very interesting kind of video, and we'll see if it leads to anything more in the news if this goes more and more viral. So I'm going to follow that and stay abreast of it if I can. Last video for today and Planet Doug's YouTube stories is from Backpacker Ben. I was really excited to see that this video showed up because, as I talked about before, Bald and Bankrupt, Backpacker Ben, and Simon Wilson, they went on a trip together to Pakistan. And they went to the city of Karachi, and then the three of them took the train to a city called Quetta. And Bald and Bankrupt, he already posted his video, like one video about Karachi and the train trip and Quetta. So it's one video covering the whole experience. Backpacker Ben already posted one video about Karachi, and now he just posted his second video about the train trip. And I really enjoyed it. I was hoping there would be more detail in Backpacker Ben's video, and it turns out that there was. So in terms of the train ride, Backpacker Ben showed a lot more about, you know, just being at the train station, trying to find the right train platform, getting on the train, and then this unbelievable circus of trying to figure out which bunk is theirs, because their ticket was not in English, and the numbering system, I think Backpacker Ben said it was in Urdu, it's not in English, so they had trouble even figuring out, like, because they had these weird bunks all over the place. Like, it wasn't like a, you know, it's not a private cabin or anything like that. They were just bunks, very thin, short bunks. And there were even three of them on each side, like bunk beds. And if you took all three of them and lowered them, there's almost like no space for a person to fit. It's like a foot, like, I don't know, maybe less than a meter, way less than a meter, maybe 2 feet of space between one bunk and the next one above it. So these were very uncomfortable sleeping quarters, and they couldn't figure out which ones were theirs. And they're talking to the local people, trying to ask them, like, they can't get any information. And then eventually some people told them, well, don't worry about it. The train is kind of empty right now, so you just take these ones, you know, don't even worry about it. Just settle in, use these lower bunks, everything will be fine. So they settled into these lower bunks, but then as soon as they were like trying to go to sleep, the train stopped somewhere else. A whole bunch of more people came on, and a whole family came on and says, oh, those are our bunks. We have the tickets. You're sleeping in our bunks. So now, you know, Ben and Bald and Simon Wilson, they all had to like pack up, get out of those bunks, try to figure out which, you know, it just went on and on and on throughout the whole night. Just total chaos. Couldn't figure out anything. So, and Bald, he didn't really show any of that. And the key thing about this train is that it goes into the mountains through a really desolate area that is connected to the history of, you know, Alexander the Great's, you know, army and his invasions, the Bolan Pass. And Bald and Bankrupt talked about it a lot, but my memory of his video is that I don't really have any memory of him showing any of this. But, you know, Backpacker Ben, he actually took the time to take his Sony, you know, X3000 camera and went to the door of the train, you know, between train cars, and he's hanging out the door, and then he's filming like when they went through the most dramatic mountain terrain where, you know, the train tracks have been blasted through the mountains, and you know, very dramatic, very otherworldly, desolate area, like really interesting to see, like desert and dry, but high up in the mountains. Backpacker Ben actually shot video of it. He actually showed what it looked like. So I found that much more informative than Bald and Bankrupt's video. And then they finally got to Quetta, and that his video ends, I think, when they arrive. So I enjoyed the video a lot. because of all of the more detail about the journey, what it was really like. And it was far more difficult than I realized. You know, Bald and Bankrupt didn't really focus on the difficulties. And Backpacker Ben showed, it's like, it was one of those, you know, 27-hour train ride from hell, like really hard, got no sleep at all, you know, really physically demanding and mentally and emotionally difficult as well. So yeah, I appreciated all that detail. But then following up on their Karachi videos, they continued the habit of being afraid of the local food, which kind of surprises me. I talked about that in my other BTS video. And on this trip, as far as I can tell, they ate nothing but chocolate bars and cookies, because, you know, they found a couple of places, and I guess there was like a little cafe on the train, and the guy had a big box of like actual like Cadbury chocolate bars. Like when they were on the train platform, Backpacker Ben went out looking for food, and all they were selling was boiled eggs and tea, and there was probably rice there as well, I would imagine. But then he just sort of dismissed it. It's like, oh, no way, I'm not eating any of that. Like, I couldn't find any food. So then he went back on the train, and he went up to the stall, and he just like got a big, like 2 handfuls, like scooped up like all the Cadbury chocolate bars, and said, okay, I'll buy all of these. And then they handed them out to a bunch of other people on the train. And then he and Bald and Simon sat at a table, and they're just like eating chocolate bars the whole time, you know, going to Quetta. And that kind of surprised me too. Again, because of, you know, they're building this reputation of being real adventurers, going places where tourists never go, and, you know, really pushing that angle of it. It does strike me as surprising that they're so unwilling to eat any of the local food, and they just lived on chocolate bars the entire time. And so far, I mean, I haven't seen his video from Quetta, so I don't know what he eats there, but they were staying at the, you know, 4-star luxury Serena hotel, so I'm assuming they ate all their meals at the fancy restaurant inside the hotel, you know, rather than risking, you know, the food of Pakistan. And my question about the food kind of ties in with another question I have about the timing of one of these trips, because I noticed that, you know, Bald and Bankrupt in particular, he has like no luggage, like nothing. I don't know what he's traveling with, but he has like a small knapsack that's so small that you never even see it in the video. So I do wonder how he manages to get away with this. Sure, you can travel lighter or heavier, but if you're any kind of a YouTuber, I mean, at the very least, don't you have to have a laptop? And then once you have a laptop and you're editing videos, I mean, you do end up with an assortment of, you know, camera batteries, electrical cords and adapters and charging cables. And, you know, your bag, even if you try really, really hard to keep it as small and light as possible, you're still going to have a certain size bag. But I'm assuming Bald and Bankrupt doesn't bring a laptop, and he doesn't do any of his video editing at all on the spot. So what I'm wondering is, how many days was he in Pakistan? And I'm wondering whether this like decision to be in Pakistan for just really small number of days allows him to travel this light. I'd love to know, like, behind the scenes, you know, I wish he would put out a newsletter that breaks down the logistics. And then maybe he was in, I don't know, maybe he's in the UK, he's in his apartment in the UK, and then he plans a trip to Pakistan, and maybe it's fly in, spend 4 days, fly out back to the UK. And if you plan a trip like that, I mean, that opens up a lot of advantages, because if you're only going to be there for 4 days, you don't have to bring anything. You know, all you have to bring is enough memory cards for your Sony 3000, one t-shirt, and a toothbrush, and away you go, right? And a smartphone. Charger for your smartphone. you don't really have to bring anything. So if you're planning a trip as short as 4 days, you fly into Pakistan, spend 4 days in Pakistan, and then you have a flight booked to go back to the UK, that is an advantage in that you don't have to bring anything with you. That's kind of cool. I wouldn't want to do that, but I can see how that would work out. But the disadvantage maybe is that you don't have any time to waste. And if you have no time to waste, you can't risk getting sick, right? Because, I mean, if you land in Karachi and the very first day you're out on the street trying all the street food, and then the next day you're sick as a dog and you're sick for an entire week, obviously your trip is a disaster. So maybe if you're planning to go to Pakistan for 4 days, then it makes sense that Bald refuses to eat any of the local food. He will only eat at McDonald's, and then he will eat at the 5-star hotel restaurant. Those are the only places where he'll eat or drink, because he can't risk any kind of a stomach problem because he doesn't have enough time to deal with it, right? So yeah, I'd like to know. I'm just very curious, because I struggle so much with so many things in life and in my YouTube life, that when I see somebody else just sailing through it with no issues at all and never talking about anything going wrong, I end up wondering, it's like, man, what am I doing wrong? Like, what? I'm curious how this happens, and then I like to figure these logistics out, right? Anyway, so that was Backpacker Ben's video, and yeah, I think that is the end of it. I don't think I have any other thoughts, and I guess he will post one more video, or at least one more, from Quetta. And as I talked about in my other video about Bald's video, I couldn't really figure out what he was doing there. He was there and he was trying to go somewhere else, but he had to get permits from the military, but he couldn't get them, and he ended up having to leave. And I couldn't figure out the actual details. Hopefully Backpacker Ben, when he posts his video, will actually talk a little bit more about, oh, okay, what we want to do in Quetta is go to this town located here, and we want to go there because of this. But then, we tried to get, the military told us, you can't go there without a permit and an armed escort. And then they tried to arrange that, couldn't do it. So now, because of that, and because our flight is in 2 days, we have to take a bus back to Karachi and then get back on our flight out of the country. We'll see. And I'm waiting for Sam Wilson to post his video, because I have zero clue what he's doing in Pakistan, especially based on his video history. I'm looking at it going, well, he must have some sort of a challenge, because he does all his videos based on challenges. So what exactly got him to book a flight to Pakistan? He didn't do it on a whim. He did it. He didn't do it with a plan because he's really interested in Pakistan. He did it, I'm sure, because of some sort of a gimmick. Some Pakistani spun a wheel, and the wheel landed on, go to Pakistan and try the street food in Karachi, and that was his challenge or something. So who knows? Anyway, we'll see how long it takes for Sam Wilson to finish his video. Looking forward to that. My newest pop culture obsession is the newest series of True Detective. I don't think I've talked about this yet, have I? Right now I can't quite remember, but I don't think I have. The newest season is season 4, and so far 3 episodes have been released. And this season of True Detective is a bit of a departure from the previous seasons. I've watched seasons 1, 2, and 3. Right now, I don't have a strong, detailed memory of those 3 seasons, and I haven't done a deep dive into them. But this one is a bit of a departure, I think. New characters, new setting. The star is Jodie Foster. The weird thing is, I started watching it, And I instantly recognized Jodie Foster, but I didn't think it was Jodie Foster. I thought it was Helen Hunt, right? She looked, I'm going to have to put photographs side by side, but in terms of the age and everything about them and the voice, I was watching the whole first episode and I thought, wow, Helen Hunt is in True Detective. And then I started reading some articles and some, like a YouTube, episode recap, something like that. And it was all about, oh, Jodie Foster stars in the new season of True Detective. And I'm thinking, that was Jodie Foster. I had it completely backwards. I was convinced it was Helen Hunt. Go figure. But anyway, so she's there, Jodie Foster, she's the star, and it's set in the North, set in Alaska, I assume, the fictional town of Ennis. And Ennis is so far north that it's one of these places where the sun disappears for a long time. Because they're so far north, the sun goes down below the horizon during the winter, and then it doesn't come up for 5 weeks. So they basically have 5 weeks of darkness, basically. So it's in a very interesting setting, and it's also an area of the local indigenous people. So it heavily focuses on their culture. The town of Ennis, the economy of the modern town of Ennis is based almost entirely on a mine, like a big industrial mine. So far, like I'm 3 episodes in, I don't know what they mine. I have no idea exactly what this mine is doing, but there's a lot going on in the background about this mine, shenanigans, bad things happening, maybe polluting the local environment, crimes going on, and the covering up. They have the mine owners have links with the local police and corruption in the background. And then, of course, True Detective, the story is always about people being murdered, people dying, about crimes. So our hero, kind of, in a way, True Detective heroes are a little bit anti-heroes. And Jodie Foster's character is a little bit of an anti-hero. She is our hero, and we're rooting for her to solve this very macabre crime. But at the same time, she's being portrayed as not the most likable person. She's not out there trying to get everybody to like her. She's tough, and so there is that side to it as well. And I'm enjoying it immensely, because of the characters, the acting, the story, the setting. I love anything that is new, and going to a town with, I don't know how long it stays dark, let's say 6 weeks or 2 months of darkness. That's a new setting for me, and that makes the story very, very interesting. We're not going to see the sun. It feels almost like a Stephen King story, or, Pitch Black, the movie Pitch Black, where this planet completely changes when it goes from bright sunlight to total darkness for months because of, there's an eclipse basically, and all kinds of monsters come out in the dark, and that's what's going on here. And there are elements of the supernatural, and I'm a little bit worried about that, because I do have impatience with stories that hint at the supernatural, involve the supernatural, and then when you get to the end of the story, they never explain it. They just leave everything hanging. And things are happening in this story that we're still at the point where, okay, based on what we've discovered so far, you could explain everything in regular scientific terms. There's a logical, as crazy as everything is, if you push it, you can come up with a logical, science-based explanation for everything. But you can also look at everything and say, okay, this is all about the supernatural, monsters, witches, curses, some ancient stories and symbols that go back for hundreds of thousands of years. Like, who knows? Like, it could go either way. It could be both of them. You know, are we talking about, you know, bacteria, ancient DNA that we're uncovering, you know, from ice cores from millions of years ago? Or are we talking about ghosts and, you know, the spooky things that tie in with the, you know, the indigenous culture as well, and their ancient legends and stories and traditions? You know, which is it? So I am a little bit nervous that they're just never going to give an explanation, or they're just going to say, oh, it's a little bit of both, but we're never going to conclude either story. So that does worry me to an extent. But anyway, I'm not going to let that interfere with my enjoyment of the story. So I'm going to follow True Detective Season 4 with Jodie Foster, not Helen Hunt, as I mistakenly thought. So yeah, I'm enjoying that quite a bit. All right, I think that is the end of today's behind the scenes. Now I kind of have to go back to my arrangements, maybe possible arrangements for this ferry to Malaysia. It's an interesting question because, you know, if I want to go to Malaysia, taking the ferry from Medan is actually far more complicated, and it's going to take a lot longer than flying. I mean, I'm in Medan, there's an airport in Medan, I could hop on a flight and I could be in KL in 1 hour. Taking the ferry, I was surprised actually. Let me look this up just to get it correct. And the details are a little bit confusing or a little bit surprising to me, because when I took the ferry from Duma to Port Dickson, I think it took 2.5 hours. It was a fast trip. I thought it was longer than that. But now this one, according to the online schedule, from Tanjung Balai to Port Dickson is from 9:30 in the morning, arriving at 4 in the afternoon. So it's, you know, 7 hours long. And when you look at the map, it is farther, and as far as I can tell, it is a fast ferry. It's not like it's a slow boat, I don't think. But for this fast ferry to take 7 hours to get there, it would require a lot more fuel, and I would think it would cost a lot more, like double the price. But the price seems to be almost the same as from Dumai. So anyway, it's a long trip. It looks like, yeah, leave at 9:30 in the morning, arriving at 4 at the dock. And that's a much longer than leaving by plane. But of course, the other side of it is it's far more interesting to me, because I would end up taking a train from Medan to Tanjung Balai, and that would be interesting. You know, I could even record that experience as a YouTube video. And then I get to go back to Tanjung Balai, a place that I really love. I have fond memories of that city. I spent a long time there in my history of slow travel. And then I could spend a couple of nights in Tanjung Balai, and then the ferry to Malaysia. I can shoot a video about that, and that is much more appealing to me than going to the airport and 1 hour later I'm in KL. You know, I probably wouldn't even record that on video. So anyway, I have to go back onto the internet, chat with the ferry people a bit more. I think I'm able to exit with my visa on arrival documents. I think that's what the guy was telling me, and I guess I can take a chance on it. But now I have to figure out how to buy a ticket, and we'll see if that's easy or difficult. I'm sure it would be easy for everybody else in the world, but I will find a way to make it extremely difficult. I always do. We'll see how it turns out. So that's it, shutting down. I'm gonna have another cup of coffee, and yeah, after my coffee, I will start my day. See you in the next video.